Hello. Now you're going to hear the truth. Just kidding.
How are you doing today?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sit back, relax. Your levels so far look good. If you don't mind, just introducing, saying your name, and then your association with Stephen.
My name is Kat Dees, and I am married to Stephen Dees.
Welcome to Echoes of Addiction, a deep personal exploration of how addiction impacts not only the individual but also the people who love them. This series begins with an interview with Stephen Dees, who shares his journey through addiction and recovery. Through intimate conversations with his wife, sister, and mentor, this podcast uncovers the lasting consequences of addiction before, during, and after recovery. Their stories reveal that the struggle doesn't end with sobriety. It leaves an imprint on every relationship and every stage of life. To start off, can you remember the first time you saw Stephen Dees? And then where you were, what it was, just can you describe that moment?
I don't know that I can recall the actual first moment I ever met Stephen Dees. I know that we had very casual interactions at church. He was part of the program at that time, but I had no knowledge of what the program was about. I have no background in recovery. It wasn't until I felt led to start praying for him by name that I do recall that True Purpose would come, but they only came like every 6 weeks. And I recall one specific time, and this is how I recall it. I don't know that this is actually how it happened, but it was like the doors of the church swung open and there were a group of men that entered, and the only one I could see was Stephen.
Did you know once the men walked in, when did you start learning what True Purpose was?
So I prayed for Stephen for 9 months by name, and we never really had interactions except a very casual good morning when we would pass each other in church. And again, I would see the group of men. It wasn't until we had a group at the church for singles, and they would go do activities together. And I was finally able to participate. It was a Sunday evening, and they were going to the corn maze in October. And by then, Stephen was on social media, and I could see where he was going to be there. And I was excited because I thought, well, I'm finally going to get to have a conversation with this guy. And I'm telling you some things that aren't even related to the question you're asking, because we get there, they're a group of people, and I'm thinking, there he is. I'm going to finally get to talk to this guy and really get to know him. And he was wearing this cute little backpack, and I thought, oh, how cute. Come to find out, he was there with another female, and she had a child. And this, I'm going to be very transparent here. We're walking through the corn maze, and it's very evident that they're together. And I recall my exact words to the Lord were, I'm going to pray for her because she doesn't know it, but she's out of here.
What drew you to him? Do you have any idea?
No, because I'll be real. If it would have been my choice, he wouldn't be the one I chose. Because so 2 weeks from that date, he asked me to go out. And my thing is, I don't disrespect other ladies. So my thing was, well, is that with or without your girlfriend? And so we had to clear that up. And so it took another couple weeks. We went out on our first date. And that's when I got to hear about True Purpose. That's when I got to hear about his background. That's when he started to share his story. And in the moment that he was sharing with me, I was having a conversation with the Lord saying, but I've been good, and this is what you've got for me. Because it was scary. You talk about prison time, and that's not the life I've come from. I grew up middle class. I was never around addiction. My friends went off to college. We were all in church. And then to hear that he was an ex-con and the charges that he'd faced and his meth addiction for 15 years, and it was intimidating, for sure, intimidating.
So why, after hearing all of that, were you still asking the Lord, this is what you have for me? Why were you so certain that, even after that first conversation, you and Stephen were going to continue a relationship? Why didn't you just say, this is not for me, Lord, I don't think this is for me, and you move on?
By the time Stephen and I went on our first date, I knew he was supposed to be my husband.
listened to his story, did you have any judgment, any thoughts about, if I bring this man home to my family, what will they think about him?
Absolutely. Because I am half Filipino, my mom is old school. She's been here 50 years, but she sounds like she stepped off the boat yesterday. Very traditional. And so Stephen and I got married 60 days later without any of my family for that reason, because I knew they wouldn't support it for sure. My daughter was aware, but she was angry for sure. So there was resistance for sure.
Okay, I want to backtrack a bit to life before Stephen, just to set the tone.
Okay.
Kind of, where'd you grow up? What led you to Knoxville? Have you always been in Knoxville? And what was life like before Stephen?
So I don't have a background of addiction, but I do have a background of childhood trauma. So I was born in the Philippines, but I came here as a child. My mother married my stepfather, and then he adopted me. But there was abuse my whole childhood into my adolescence. And so I got married at 18. At 20, I had my daughter, and then by 22, I was having my third child. So I have 3 children. I was married to my high school sweetheart for 14 years. But I grew up middle class. I played sports. I was in honors classes. All my girlfriends were overachievers. That was just the life I came from. There was no addiction. No one went to jail or prison. And then I go through a divorce, and my cousin, whom is someone that I grew up doing everything with, she moved here. She met a man who was from Knoxville. He was in the military. And I was raised in California, so he was a military guy. Well, they moved back here, and I came to visit, and I fell in love. I fell in love with little old Maryville. And so going through my divorce, I knew that this is where I wanted to be. The other part of that story is that I had a lot of trauma to heal from, and because of my mother's culture, I couldn't speak my truth in San Diego because I had to save face, you know. So I got to come to Maryville and speak my truth and begin my recovery. And so I raised my kids. Their father has always been very involved in their lives. That was very important to me because I didn't have my father. I was always in church, and life was just simple. I just worked. I worked for, before I worked for the church, I worked for Pellissippi State for 15 years. So I guess I lived a simple life. It was me, kids, and church.
Now we're going to jump back forward. You said 60 days from your first date till you got married. What were those 60 days like with Stephen?
I can't say that I've ever experienced this before, but when you meet someone and you just know they were supposed to be a part of your present and your future, it just was. From our first date, we were together every day. Now, he lived at the program. He was I can't remember if he was in privileges or a graduate, and I had my own place. But yeah, every day we were together, or we at least communicated. And by then, he was attending my church all the time.
If you guys know you're going to be together for the long run, what was the decision to just do it after 60 days?
Because we knew that we couldn't live together and not be married and honor our faith. And so, and I'm not saying we were perfect by any means, but we wanted to do it right, you know? And so that was, I'd say that was a driving force. And in all truth, if I didn't have the certainty that he was supposed to be my husband, I think that we would have done the more traditional thing and dated, and it would have been much longer. But I already knew. I already knew. I was just waiting for him to get on board.
Stephen mentioned it when I talked to him that marriage is hard, and
Absolutely.
there's a lot of things that were hard for you guys coming from 2 different backgrounds, 2 different lifestyles, middle class, and he obviously had a lot of struggles growing up. So what are some of those challenges, especially for you coming from someone who didn't see substance abuse growing up, coming from someone who was in the middle class in very different situations from Stephen?
I think the easiest way to describe it is it's almost like we speak 2 different languages, because where I come from, I would do something and I felt I was honoring him or respecting him, but he would feel so totally disrespected. And I didn't understand that. It was really trying to understand each other. And even now, I still think when we've got it figured out, the Lord's like, oh no, there's more. And so our communication style is very different. The way we respond to stress and struggles is very different. I will say this. One of the things I enjoyed immensely when Steve and I first got together is because he came out of such dysfunction that he didn't get to enjoy a lot of things that we take for granted growing up. He didn't have parents that nurtured him. I remember one of the things we did our very first year we were married, we got season passes to Dollywood and Splash Country, and every weekend that's where we went. And getting to see and experience Dollywood through his eyes, it was almost childlike, the awe and amazement. And so I would say the early part of our marriage, that was such a blessing for me to be able to experience things through his eyes and to really appreciate the things that we do have that we take for granted, for sure.
And then once Stephen was in your life, you guys were married, how did your family react to him? Was there any
resistance? Yes, ma'am. Still is. So my mother, when she comes to visit, she'll stay for a few months, but she stays with my daughter because my daughter has the cute grandchildren, and we joke that Mom, I was born first, but that doesn't matter. But anyways, so she comes, she's visiting, and we invite her to church, and we happen to go to a service in which Stephen is sharing his testimony, and that's how she hears his story. I remember I stood up and I walked to the back of the room, and I was just watching her facial expression as she was listening to him speak, and it was, she definitely was trying to control her facial expression, but when he was finished and he took a seat, she immediately told him, if I would have known, I would have not allowed my daughter to marry you. Now, she says that, so she's come to visit over the years, and she is Catholic, but when she comes to visit, she comes to our church. So coming to our church, she started to get to know the True Purpose guys. Now, mind you, we grew up not exposed to that. She fell in love with the True Purpose guys. So she even, one visit, cooked a Filipino feast for the entire campus of 60 guys just because she just wanted to bless them. Now, she still struggles with my husband, but that's just because she's my mama. But she has fallen in love with True Purpose. And it's given her a different perspective on men who struggle with addiction.
How is your relationship with Stephen's family?
Wonderful. I love them. I believe that they're people that I would still be friends with even if I wasn't married to Steve and Dees. They're good people. And the thing is to recognize that they've also been through their own trauma. And I don't know if his sister shared any of that, but it's amazing to me that they're even able to operate and function with some of the things that they've experienced. Yeah.
What is something that Stephen's taught you as someone who has recovered?
So the entire time I've been married to Stephen, he's been clean. In fact, we just celebrated 12 years of sobriety for him, which is a big deal. But one thing I have learned is that even if someone is not using, they're clean, does not mean that they have recovered from the mindset of an addict. And that is one thing that I have learned by being married to Stephen is the mindset of an addict. And I say this in that, I don't know if he shared with you what my job is, but working for the church, I now facilitate our recovery program. But Stephen has been my training ground. The Lord has used him to prepare me for what he has me doing now, for sure.
What is like the growth that you have seen in him from the day you've met him until now you guys are celebrating his 12th year of sobriety?
A lot of growth, a lot of maturity, a lot of working through the pain There was a lot of unhealed, a lot of deep wounds, and the way it would manifest would be in anger and rage. And he has matured immensely. He's a different man from who he is now. I don't know if he described to you what he was like when I first met him. He used to only wear white t-shirts and basketball shorts with the knee-high socks and the sliders, and he looked like he just walked out of jail. And he'd walk with this swag, and I call it his prison walk, because you had to have it or else they mess with you, you know? And he had spent so much time locked up. People that see him now that were from his past say he's a transformed man. He's actually adapted to this new life that we live.
If someone's listening in the same position that I've been, or you in your earlier lives that have no idea what substance abuse is and how addiction happens and it continues to happen, what would you tell them as someone who now knows from firsthand experience, married to someone who struggled with substance abuse?
I would say first and foremost, if you find yourself around someone who struggles with addiction, use wisdom in that you need to protect yourself. You need to be guarded because they are not capable of making wise decisions, and they are not capable of thinking of others before themselves. Addiction is very selfish. But I also say, see them as the wounded people.
Take your time.
Sorry.
No, take your time.
Gosh.
You guys are all so strong. It's amazing to me.
I also say that see them as the broken individuals that they are, that their addiction is not their identity. It's just what has consumed them because they have such deep wounds that no one has been willing to show them or teach them or walk with them so that they can recover. The addiction, the drugs, the alcohol is just a physical manifestation of the deep, dark wounds within. And so choose to love them because they are good people. You'll be surprised when they get sober what amazing individuals they are, for sure.